What's up, everybody? This is Danny Thompson checking with you live. Here is Talking Hoops for, as you see, August 18th, 2020. We're live here on Zingo Television, Facebook Live, Channel 198 and Zingo Television. Also, as well as YouTube as well, too. And everywhere you can hear the sound of my voice, I'm Danny Thompson from the 3-Point Conversion, as well as the host of Beyond the Buzzer. And to the left of me tonight, yes, the left of me, we switched spots tonight, all right? It's like rankings in college basketball. LSU has taken over the left side tonight. My main man, the basketball savant himself, DeShaun Tate's in the building with me. DeShaun, what's up, my friend?
DT, what's up, baby, man? I'm happy that we're getting some basketball, dude. I mean, I wasn't sure that this thing was necessarily going to work out, but it's been great. There hasn't been, players testing positive for corona, and so it's been outstanding. We've seen some great performances. We've seen, the first time in NBA playoff history that four players under the age of 25 all scored 30 points in the same day. So I know that that's one of those weird little quirky stat lines or whatnot, but that's what I'm here for, man, to talk some hoops. If not, I don't know what the heck the good Lord put me on this earth for.
Listen, I mean, this is our favorite time of year. Like I was mentioning on Beyond the Buzzer last night. For basketball fans, yesterday wasn't just the playoffs. It was a cornucopia of greatness yesterday. Why? Because cornucopia. Yeah, I'm bringing it out early.
What is that word you just used?
Cornucopia. All right, it's a term you don't use at Thanksgiving when everything comes together.
Okay.
And that's what it was yesterday, because for the first time in my memory, I can never, ever remember having a playoff game on a Monday afternoon at 1:30 in the afternoon. Like, this is like the NCAA tournament meets the NBA all at the same time, 4 games on per day. You thought bubble was great, but having meaningful basketball playoff games in the middle of the afternoon starts off everything. And so that's where we're going to start tonight.
In the month of August.
Yeah, and this is normally NFL, college football season. And, we're normally talking about, things like, the NBA offseason, but we got playoffs, we got NBA draft, and we have bubble. Speaking of bubble, we'll start with the breaking news in the NBA that just came out about maybe 20, 25 minutes or so ago. So our good friend Sham Sharina over at the Athletic/the Stadium has reported that the 8 teams who were not in Orlando can finally get together. Yes, there'll be bubble basketball, sort of, for the teams that did not get a chance to play the bubble in Orlando. So it's a little bit weird. So let me explain how this works and how it's being broken down to everybody across the league. So once again, the 8 teams. So the 8 teams that were not invited were, because they weren't very good, were the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Charlotte Hornets, Atlanta Hawks, Detroit Pistons, Cleveland Cavaliers, Atlanta Hawks, and the New York Knicks. So all those teams who missed the playoffs, who should be in the lottery, which they will be, were invited to actually do some different things in the offseason. So let me explain how this is going to work out in each phase. So there'll be 2 phases, DeShaun. The phase 1 will start September 14th through September 20th, which means testing will begin for all the players and individual workouts will begin. They get going for real in phase 2 on September 21st through October 6th. That's going to be in groups training camp sessions where they'll be in a campus-style setting with private living accommodations for all the players involved. All right? So technically, they'll be in their own bubble. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, we do not know where they're going. They did not say where it is going to be in one location. Just know that teams can get together. Now, for this phase, each team will create a campus-like environment in its home city. So basically, the 8 teams will basically be by themselves, essentially. It is what it is. But the campus setting will provide team facilities and private living accommodations for all participating players and team staff. All the players that will be inside this bubble cannot leave. Another interesting rule with this whole thing is that each team can bring 5 of their G League players up as well, too. So it's basically the same number of roster players that you see, because I think the roster, DeShaun, expanded to 17 for the bubble. So now you'll be about 17 to 20 players that are going to be working out throughout this entire time. Other part is things that are being worked upon is, for example, they're going to limit 5-on-5 scrimmages to up to an hour per day at this point. We don't know if that's official, but that's one of the rumors that's going around. The good news is if you're a fan of a team and you make it, at least your team won't have to deal with the fact of not playing basketball for 8 months. Because potentially we're not getting basketball back until maybe December. Maybe. So at least these players can get some kind of workouts in a group setting, in a controlled environment. Yeah, it's against their own teammates, but guess what? Something is better than nothing.
True.
So for teams like the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets and the Cleveland Cavaliers, 3 teams that are extremely young, it's good to get this setting in. Mm-hmm. It's good to get those extra reps in. It's like Summer League. It might be with each other, but it's good things. The Golden State Warriors, I'm not really sure how much they're going to use this for, but it'll be good to get Klay Thompson and Steph Curry back in basketball rhythm. Mm-hmm. The New York Knicks are the New York Knicks, so it doesn't really matter. Mm-hmm. Minnesota Timberwolves, it allows D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns more time together, mm-hmm. and also Jarrett Culver gets more time too, DeShaun. And I'm going to ask you for your opinion. So I've named a couple of teams, but that's what I've already named. The Bulls and the I'm missing somebody. Who are we missing here? Yeah, there's somebody else we're missing. So the other 4 teams I did mention, what do you look at those other 4 teams? So start with Detroit, since that's your hometown area.
You were breaking up just a tad bit, so I only got bits and pieces.
No problem. So what I was saying was I went over a couple of teams. I went over the Warriors, the Timberwolves. I didn't cover the Charlotte Hornets. I went over the Knicks, and I forgot what else I went over. But what about the other teams, the Atlanta Hawks, because you're in Atlanta, Detroit, Charlotte, Chicago? What do you expect from those 4 teams in this type of setting?
Well, I think it's great for all the teams. I mean, specifically the Atlanta Hawks, who have an opportunity to hopefully see Clint Capella on the floor and kind of get some of that chemistry developed between he and Trae Young, who likes to be in pick and roll situations and throw that lob. Even more so for Clint Capella to play alongside. And I don't know why I'm drawing a blank here for a quick second, but John Collins. Just, so that they can kind of create that front court tandem, if you will. Even more so, like you said, for a team like the Detroit Pistons. When I was talking about the Hawks, I forgot to mention, I saw Trae Young with a tweet on yesterday saying he can't wait to be here and talking about, obviously, I would imagine the NBA playoffs. That's something that would be good for him just so he can create that chemistry. But it's creating chemistry early for everybody. I mean, to be able to go out there and not have to sit out almost a year without playing any kind of basketball at all with your teammates. And so even for the Detroit Pistons, who I know have trying to put themselves into the position to compete along with Chicago Bulls and all these other teams. I mean, granted, these are teams that they have to do something. They've got to get out there and try and put something together as a team. And I know that these aren't necessarily the most attractive words to use, but it's really just a matter of being able to get out there and get some sort of reps to some kind of extent. I mean, you can't expect to have high expectations for these particular teams who are already so bad that they didn't have the opportunity to make the playoffs. So I can only imagine what it'll do for them to be able to have something to put together amongst one another.
Cortland Griffin down in the chat. If you're on Facebook Live or on YouTube, leave a comment and we'll post it on the air. As you see Cortland Griffin's comment saying, is this this a Chicago bubble they were rumoring about? No, this is something completely different. They talked about putting all the teams in one setting, but to Rodney Richardson's point, listen, no one wants to go to Chicago to get robbed. Listen, I'm not saying yes or saying no, but putting all those teams in one area, where are you going to play them at this time of year? It's not a good idea. Also, Precious Sherrod in the chat says, hey, guys. Hey, Precious. Thanks for tuning in. So if you got some comments, like I said, below, leave them there. We'll definitely put them on air. And Cortland Griffin also said the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young and Cam Reddish get more time to mesh.
And you know what? I'm glad that was said, and I didn't mean to cut you short, but especially for the Atlanta Hawks as well. I mean, Cam Reddish, who was, top 10 pick in the NBA draft in the lottery and had high expectations. A lot of people had for him, especially in the city of Atlanta, and didn't necessarily do that well coming out the gate and even mid-season through the way. But during that last probably 8 to 10 games, he put together some really, really good performances and showcased and showed flashes a little bit of what some people did expect. So I hate that the season got cut short, especially for him, because he looked like he was on the road. But I'm looking forward to see if he can pick it back up where he last left off.
And another interesting storyline, DeShaun, that you didn't mention when it comes to these teams that didn't make the playoffs is the fact that if you look at the Chicago Bulls, for example, the Bulls don't have a head coach. So now the ability to go hire a coach, you're now accelerating that time clock because you're going to get almost a month to get your players together, to get a system together. The Bulls are going to have to find a head coach, I think, sooner than later. You can't go into this without a head coach. The Bulls fired Jim Borland last week, and if you don't have a head coach, this is not going to be good. For the Knicks, they get time to learn Tom Thibodeau's system. That means Tom Thibodeau has the ability to start whipping Mitchell Robinson in shape and tell him to stop fouling. It's a chance for Kevin Knox to actually learn how to play basketball and RJ Barrett to do something more than break 18-foot shots on a regular basis. This gives Thibodeau a chance to actually put this team together. So when and the good thing is when free agency gets here, which will be right after October 6th, these teams can start figuring out the holes. And also with the NBA draft, okay, this is what we have, this is what we don't have. And you get a closer evaluation to what it is. Now, the real interesting thing is, if you look at some of these players who are free agents on these teams, do you really want to go in this environment and you might not be on that team in a couple of weeks? Interesting, because there's so many dynamics to it. But if you're a team like the Charlotte Hornets, who's a team full of youth, they might be able to figure out, is Devontae Graham their point guard of the future? I mean, because we all know on Thursday night is for the teams who didn't make the playoffs, it's like basically Black Friday because on Thursday it's, as we segue, the NBA lottery. DeShaun's favorite time of year because, well, mine as well too, but this is a time of year where it's basically, if you've been terrible all year, you get a chance to restart by taking some of the best college prospects in the country in a draft setting. The bad news is this is not exactly the most deepest class. And me and DeShaun have gone back and forth. We might do a little back and forth tonight about what's going on with the NBA lottery. All right, DeShaun, here's the thing. The lottery is on Thursday. All right. We already got all the representatives. I'll go over the representatives in just about who could represent each team. But before we get there might be an interesting storyline, DeShaun. It seems like the city of New York has been real of late. Why do I say that? The WNBA draft, the New York Liberty got the first overall pick, Sabrina Ionescu. The NHL had their lottery, and the playoff team the bubble team that got the number 1 overall pick was the New York Rangers. They get a chance to draft Alexis Lafreniere, who was considered the next big thing in junior hockey. They're comparing him to Sidney Crosby, a franchise-changing player, and he's going to Broadway. Now the Knicks have the ability to get the first overall pick in this draft with potentially a generational type of talent. I know you're not a big fan. LaMelo Ball could actually be ending up in New York. I got to say, you're the biggest fan of LaMelo Ball. I think he's perfect for New York. All right? Listen, wouldn't it be interesting to see the city of New York to get 3 number 1 picks in 3 different sports, have them all be under that same umbrella? Guys and girls, basically athletes who are considered the top of where they're coming into. Sabrina Ionescu, who was labeled as who was signed off on by Kobe Bryant. You know, if Kobe signs off on you, you've got to have some kind of game. Sabrina was one of the camp counselors at the Mamba Academy. So she was teaching kids how to play basketball under the tutelage of Kobe Bryant. Not to mention 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 1,000 assists in a college career. I don't think anybody has ever done that, men or women, in any sports, unless it's like Division 7. Okay? We talk about Lafreniere in hockey, comparable to Sidney Crosby. If you want to make a comparison, only 3 other players in the history of the Canadian Junior Hockey League have had more points in one season than Alexis Lafreniere. That was Mario Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, I think Mike Ball, and Jimmy Carson. All four of them are NHL Hall of Famers. That's the exclusive case. In LaMelo Ball's case, you're not a big fan of him. I am. I think he's ready to be a star in this league. He is. I think he is a better version of his brother. He's a better shooter. He might not be as controlled as Lonzo is, but guess what? His jump shot is way more consistent. He's much more athletic, and he's a better defender than his brother is. I don't have to worry about his talent being as much as this. I think he's in that 1 year in Australia. I think it matured him. I think he's going to be ready for Broadway. If anybody is ready for big lights, it's a ball kid. And big lights since for how long? But DeShaun, another interesting story is ESPN is going to plan an interview with Steph Curry before they do the lottery. So, DeShaun, let's talk lottery. The Golden State Warriors are sharing the top lottery odds with 3 other teams. Who do you think will win the lottery on Thursday night?
You know what? The crazy part is I'm not sure that I feel so good about it being the Golden State Warriors, considering the fact that anytime that the Cleveland Cavaliers are in this position, man, it feels like they're always the ones that end up coming out on top. In addition to that, this would be the year of all years that the Atlanta Hawks actually could get the number 1 pick, considering the fact that there is no clear-cut favorite and nobody on the draft board that doesn't necessarily have bust potential written on them. So from that standpoint, I'll say this much. While I don't know exactly who will get that pick, I'm not sure that I would want to be that particular franchise, a part of the NBA organization, to get that pick. But if I just had to throw somebody out there, until it's shown to me a little bit differently, I almost feel like I have to go with the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I mean, now, mind you, the Cleveland Cavaliers' lucky charm, which is Dan Gilbert's son, will not be representing the Cavs in the virtual lottery. Every time his son has represented the Cavs, they've drawn the number 1 overall pick. I'm just going to say the reason. Here's my theory on this. In a draft heavy of guards, I don't think the Cavs want to pick first anyway. They got too many of them. You got Colin Sexton, Kevin Porter. You have Darius Garland. Do you really want to have the ability to draft LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards at first or second in this draft class when you already got 10,000 guards already?
It could be James. It could be James Wiseman for all we know.
It could be James Wiseman. And on top of that, you have James Wiseman, Tristan Thompson, and Andre Drummond at the center position.
I just, in that particular scenario, I'm not under the impression that James Wiseman would be a consistent starter regularly. I think they want to kind of build that player up into who they really ultimately want him to be. He's going to have to be a guy that's going to have to be forced to be a better version of Nerlens Noel. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm not breaking any news with that. But the problem with that is that you only got a small sample size of less than a handful of games of what you've seen from him this year. That being considered, you add in the fact that we haven't had the opportunity to see many of these guys do any workouts or any of that kind of stuff, combine or even Portsmouth Invitational because of COVID-19. Then you have somebody like a LaMelo Ball who can occasionally be erratic, and you question his shot selection from time to time. I don't think anyone's going to argue his IQ, his length, his ball handling ability and being able to control the pace of a game per se. However, there's some red flags there. You have an Anthony Edwards who didn't wow you this year, but you know that he has the athletic and NBA build that goes along with him. But again, I'm not sure that you see anybody here that says special. I mean, the most special talent that we've actually seen with our eyes that produced on the floor is probably Obi Toppin, who probably has a really low ceiling and room for growth. So I think it'll be interesting for no matter who that team is. It would be nice to see my Pistons to be able to get the number 1 pick. You know, I'm a bad boy for life, but in that same token, the last time they were in this position, which I want to say was 2003, 4, they ended up picking the wrong guy and went the other direction. So I'm not sure how much confidence I have in them. Although I will say it's clear that, you know, it may be a good thing that Joe Dumars is not the person that's going to be assisting the organization in making that pick.
Because Joe Dumars will be assisting the Sacramento Kings after Vlade Divac had stepped down earlier in the week. I guess Vlade kept his promise. If they weren't going to make the playoffs, he was going to step down. Great. Now the Sacramento Kings are also back in the lottery once again, and guess what? They're a mess. The real question is, will Luke Walton still keep his job after all of this? So, since we're talking NBA lottery, let me give you some of the odds for the lottery and where everybody potentially will be picking in the draft, as well as the representatives who's going to represent each of the teams. All right. So, as far as the representation of all the teams around the league, we'll start with the Atlanta Hawks. The ownership chairperson, Jamie Gertz. She's one of the female owners of the franchise. If you've watched the Hawks the last couple of years in the draft, she's represented. And guess what? Every time she's gone, they've gotten well in the draft. She was there. She was there when they had the ability to take Luka Doncic, ended up trading for Trae Young. She was also part of the night that involving last year's team of Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter. The Charlotte Hornets will send the guy I think should be the sixth man, the most improved player in the league, which is Devontae Graham. Hopefully, since the NBA didn't allow him to be in the top 3 for the most improved player, it gives Charlotte every opportunity to get a top overall pick. One thing about this is, this year, Charlotte has a 6% chance to give them one overall pick. DeShaun, do you know what New Orleans' odds was to get a top overall pick last year was?
I would imagine about the same amount or less.
6%. Both teams. Listen, the NBA owes Charlotte not only for Devontae Graham, but remember the NBA. The ping pong balls didn't fall away for Anthony Davis the year after arguably the worst record in NBA history was bestowed on the Bobcats. They ended up with a second overall pick. New Orleans picked first. They got Anthony Davis. Charlotte took Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and the rest is history. The NBA kind of owes Charlotte a favor. That's all I'm saying. The Chicago Bulls.
In the event that happens, Danny, I think that it's a foregone conclusion that either Wiseman or Edwards is going to be that pick. And if I had to just give a guess as to exactly which player that would be, I don't know. I think that's a tough one. I really want to say that player is Edwards. I think he's the front runner to be the number 1 pick in the draft right now. But Michael Jordan definitely has to get this one right. That's for sure.
Listen, I mean, Anthony Edwards in a Charlotte uniform would be perfect because Charlotte hasn't had a scorer that's dynamic from the wing. Man, I mean, Gerald Wallace was a scorer, but he really wasn't a scorer. He was just a big, very big hustle guy. The last time the Hornets had a scoring wing that was actually deadly and scary, Glenn Rice was a shooter. You're thinking maybe Kendall Gill back in the 1990s. Because you go back, I mean, Jason Richardson was a 20-point game scorer, but Richardson really shot more three-pointers than anything else. He wasn't a slasher. Kendall Gill was a little bit of both. Not as good a shooter as Jason Richardson. But at Oakland, didn't realize that jump shoot, that athleticism wasn't the most important thing. The Chicago Bulls will send their brand new executive vice president of basketball operations, Arturas Kanoskis. I probably butchered and destroy his last name. He is the new head guy in charge. The Bulls do not have a head coach right now. Jim Boylan's gone. Hey, listen, the Bulls got one or two choices, DeShaun. What do? Do you go hire a Kenny Atkinson because you have a young team, and this team has a lot of similarities to the Brooklyn Nets, or do you go for more an established coach and just hope and pray that Anthony Davis signs his name on that paper in 2021? Real quick, what would you do in this situation?
I think you go with the more established coach, but I'm not going to go as far as to say that you do that in hopes that that coach will land an Anthony Davis. I don't think that Anthony Davis is going to be in Chicago Bulls red and black uniform anyway. I know that sounds great. Maybe he could do something like that at the tail end of his career, similar to the way that Dwayne Wade did it. But I don't see that right now, nor in the foreseeable future. I think you go with the experienced coach.
I think, listen, Kenny Atkinson, I think, is the best coach of this team. If anybody can take young talent and make them into something, it's Kenny Atkinson, starting in Brooklyn. I think Kenny Atkinson can turn Zach LaVine into D'Angelo Russell, and D'Angelo Russell's an all-star. That's all I'm saying. All right. The Cleveland Cavaliers, like I said, will not be sending Dan Gilbert's son, but they're going to send one of their former one of their greatest players of all time in the franchise history. Brad Daugherty's going to represent the Cavs. All right. The Detroit Pistons will send general manager Troy Weaver. I mean, who else were you going to send? Blake Griffin? I don't know who else you're going to send. I mean, Hooper. I think the mascot would be great to go. All right. The Golden State Warriors, like I said, I mentioned before, will be Steph Curry. The Memphis Grizzlies will send Elliot Perry, minority owner and director of player support. The Minnesota Timberwolves will send D'Angelo Russell. The New Orleans Pelicans will send general manager Trajan Langdon. He's a general manager. I keep forgetting. The Knicks will send president Leon Rose. Listen, CAA maybe might work something out for New York. The Phoenix Suns will send James Jones, general manager. The Sacramento Kings will try to get De'Aaron Fox to help them find some kind of luck. The Spurs will send chairman Peter Holt. And the Washington Wizards will send first pick from last year, Rui Hachimura. All right, those are all your representatives for the NBA lottery, which will take place on Thursday night. That'll be at 8:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Normally it's an hour show. It's 30 minutes because of, guess what? The NBA playoffs. I know we spent 26 minutes, DeShaun, about the NBA and have not talked the playoffs. So guess what? Let's get into it. All right. I know right now people are watching this show and wondering, why are we on during the middle of the Lakers and Blazers right now? It is what it is. Well, what you can do is you can watch Lakers and Blazers, put it on mute, and just talk to us. Listen to us. All right. Why are the Blazers here, DeShaun? Well, they won the play-in game Saturday. The good old NCAA one-game play-in game between Memphis Grizzlies and the Portland Trail Blazers. If Memphis would have won, it would have caused a second play-in game. DeShaun, what are your thoughts? Do you think did you like the play-in game format, and do you think the NBA should keep it?
I didn't like the play-in game, DT. I didn't. Okay. I loved the play-in game. I think we should see more of the play-in games. I think that there should be a way to do it for Eastern Conference as well. Obviously, I would imagine that would have been the case had it been a situation like that. But I loved it. And I even love the idea of neutral site games as well, where there is no clear-cut, favorite because of home court advantages and so forth. And I know some home cooking or home court may have been, on the stove, red hot on the eye tonight because of, Orlando didn't have very far to travel for their game. So I guess they lucked up a little bit there or just did what they were supposed to do, if I'm being quite honest. But all of the excuses are out of the window for players like LeBron James, who really probably wanted this more than ever when he said he wanted to play basketball, and Kyrie was saying, no, let's take advantage of the social injustice and racial injustice situation. He wanted this. He wanted to be able to play no matter what, after saying there's no way that I'm going to play without my fans. Even more so, it's coming off like this is – I love what the NBA has done with all of it between virtual fans and everything across the board, trying to pump in, in-house fake crowd noise and so forth. But because of the fact that they're playing in a bubble, there is no traveling fatigue. There is no traveling exhaustion. These are no excuses, no exception scenarios for the NBA. And that's something that I love more than anything else, because this is where I think that we will find out what these players and these teams are really all about, not just hanging on to the fact that they're going to get whistles blown their way because they're playing in their particular arena. Even more so, on top of that fact, is
home arena. No, what were you saying? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's okay. You're just freezing a little bit, but nonetheless, on top of that, this has a March Madness feel to it. While it does kind of with the optics kind of sense or has the energy of like a Summer League / AAU showcase / international basketball. I think that they've done a good job with it. It's a beautiful way to play this game. I really believe that because it's showing us who's really woofing and who's not. I told you this weeks ago, over months ago now at this point. Who did COVID-19 influence the most? Who's really taken away what's the biggest who took the most away from the Last Dance documentary and get some of that competitive nature boiling in their blood a little bit? And I think that we're seeing that out of quite a few players and quite a few teams as well. So I'm excited about the way that they've put the format together.
I wrote an article for the 3-point conversion this week about the NBA bubble. Listen, we need more playing games, okay?
Sure.
For those who don't watch basketball, I'm pretty sure you probably watch basketball on Saturday. All right. You had the attention of the entire country. The hardcore basketball fan knows Ja Morant. But I guarantee you after Saturday, the casual basketball fan now knows who Ja Morant is. Guarantee you, DeShaun, when the NBA schedule comes out next year, the Memphis Grizzlies will have more games on TV than they had this season. Why? Ja Morant put on a phenomenal performance, shorthanded. Okay, when I say shorthanded, Jaren Jackson was not available. He was hurt in the bubble. Tyus Jones had been hurt the entire time. Justice Winslow hadn't played one game. The Memphis Grizzlies, in a normal situation, would have probably survived and made it, but it didn't happen. But Morant wasn't going to let him go down without a fight. His 35 points and 8 assists, including I think 24 in the second half, kept them in it the whole game. But the Blazers, Damian Lillard, and CJ McCollum, who finally woke up with 14 in the fourth quarter, Blazers took advantage of the lead. Now, in the article I wrote for the 3-point conversion, like you said, DeShaun, it's only fun if both conferences can make this work. All right? Tell the Eastern Conference to play better basketball throughout the year, and we can get this to work. The reason why I said, DeShaun, we should do this going forward is because you being in Atlanta, me being in Orlando, and also down in Charlotte, we're all in the Southeast Division. All right? We're all Southeast Division teams at this point. But for the most part, Atlanta and Charlotte, for example, the last couple of years, they haven't really had nothing to play for out after St. Patrick's Day in most cases. Atlanta's case last year was pretty much torpedoed when John Collins got suspended. When he got suspended, it torpedoed the entire season. But if there is a playing game, DeShaun, now I guarantee you, if teams can have the ability to trigger the playing game, there'll be less teams that'll be sellers at the deadline and more teams that'll be buyers at the deadline.
I can see that.
If you know that all you gotta do is give within 4 games to trigger the playing game, I guarantee you'll see more teams go for it. I don't think that Detroit, if there was been a playing game this year, DeShaun, tell me this. You are affiliated with LSU, and I don't mean Louisiana State University. You're part of Light Skin United. There's one team in the Western Conference that is known for a starting backcourt who is, I don't know, part of LSU. Do you think the Golden State Warriors and Stephen Curry would have delayed that surgery on his wrist? I know they got off to a slow start. They looked pretty bad in November. We all saw how bad they looked the first 10 to 12 days of the season. DeShaun, if they knew that they would have had a chance to make the wild card or the course of playing game, do you think Steph Curry would delay his surgery on top of Klay Thompson delaying his return until 2021? Do you think they would have somehow got it back together and ran this thing in January like they should have? What are your thoughts?
Exactly. I thought they definitely would have. I don't even really think that that's in question. And, if they had an opportunity at a play-in game situation or scenario, there's no way that I can doubt that. And not just because, but more so because of the competitors that they are as people. We would have seen more of Draymond Green. And I think that would have been great because we would have had that opportunity to see Andrew Wiggins with these guys a little bit more than we did. And so I think there would have been a little bit more urgency from the medical staff and from Klay Thompson to try and make a return as well. And I think that it's something that not only do I think could have happened, but I also think it's something that we could have expected. And
I'll be honest with you, I think they would have traded D'Angelo Russell earlier. They would have pulled that. they would trade that D'Angelo Russell contract way before Klay Thompson got back in the court. Think about this. You know, Steph Curry is the ultimate competitor. Klay Thompson they're all competitors. If they knew they had a chance to beat LeBron James in the first round of the playoffs, after everything they went down, you don't think the Warriors would have turned on the Super Jets to cause them to get the ninth spot? They would have done everything possible. And here's the other part now. This is the part, Deshaun, that I thought would be fun. Let's just say we had a scenario like we had this year where we had two teams, Portland and Memphis, Phoenix and Memphis have the same record. And they both, only one team can get in. Under my scenario for the play-in game, this will go for both conferences. If you have two teams within 2 games, not 4, but 2 games of the final playoff spot, guess what happens in this scenario, Deshaun? The 7th seed gets dragged into the bubble, into the play-in matches. So instead of being 8-9, you have 8-9 and 7-10. Why would we do that? Well, guess what? Deshaun, we watched this too many times. When teams start clinching playoff spots, what happens?
They start sitting players.
If you're a team that's 6 and 7, and you start seeing the scoreboard, and the Phoenix Suns are lighting up the scoreboard, or let's just say the Atlanta Hawks are trending towards being 2 games out of the final playoff spot,
it'll force you to play your players.
If you're 6 and 7, you don't want to play potentially 2 additional games with Trae Young in the first round. You don't want no part of that. Do you want to play the way he was playing before the bubble ended? Did you want to see Greg Popovich? Do you think the Dallas Mavericks would have not sat Kristaps Porzingis in any of those games down the stretch if they knew they would have had Devin Booker or San Antonio of the Suns or the Spurs waiting for them in a potential 2-game scenario? Nobody wants that. So why would you want to do it? Yeah, you have players trying to come back from injuries. Yeah, guys can get hurt. Okay, that's the catch-22. But what happens is if you have situations like the Blazers who miss Zach Collins, who miss Jusuf Nurkic for the entire season, they get a chance at John Collins was suspended. It happens. But those teams have something to fight for. Guaranteed teams would be packing in if we knew this. On top of that, the other part is, Deshaun, if you're a team, if you're an owner of a team of potentially 7 or 8, and you have potential for 2 additional home games with revenue, and you can charge playoff ticket prices, what owner's going to say no to that? And if you're a player, guess what? For those players, and I want to say 95 to almost 100% of the players, they got contracts. They got clauses in their contracts saying they get checks if their team makes the playoffs. So what makes you don't think they're going to try to go out and play extra harder to get that bonus?
I think that that's something that would happen. And not only would it happen, but it should happen, because this is all about the competitive nature of these teams, of these players. I don't want to see anybody going out there and sitting players. I mean, essentially, it's similar to like load management for the sake of trying to save.
And I get the top seeds doing it. I get the Lakers and the Clippers doing it. They're the top 2 seeds. You want to make sure you're completely healthy for the playoffs. But no one wants to see a 6-seeded or a 7-seeded Dallas Mavericks sit out Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis for load match.
Sure.
No, I want them on the court. And guess what? If you make a 2-game situation, where if 2 teams fall within, if both teams within 2 games, that's the only rule of this. It's got to be within 2 games for both teams. If one team's within 4 games, then we have one trigger. But if 2 teams are within 2 games, then guess what? The 7th seed is all for it. I'm all for it. Because the playing game caused the Portland Trailblazers and Damian Lillard to go nuts. Lillard was just going off the final week of the bubble, won the bubble MVP. I thought it was controversial because Devin Booker should have.
And not only that, well, not only that, but Luka Doncic just done we're talking about a guy that not only performed in the bubble, but the dude's up for should have been up for an MVP as a candidate too. So yeah, between those 3 guys, I think that it's without a doubt.
I get why. Only because listen, Dame with Bucks. I mean, he had the 60-point game or 50-point game. I get it.
Yeah,
but
me too.
Devin Booker's team was undefeated, and I just hate to see Booker get undefeated. His team go undefeated and not have a chance at it. All right, we talked enough about the non-playoff teams. let's talk about what's going on right now. The NBA playoffs are underway. I know it took 40 minutes to get into it, but listen, for that playoff team, they got. Can you hear me? Let's see. Can you hear me now? A little bit. If you let's see.
Do what you were doing again.
Do you hear me now?
Do whatever you were doing again.
Hello?
I can hear you, but it's short. Go ahead. I'm with you. Go ahead. I'm with you.
So let me go ahead and get it. So we talked about the non-playoff teams other than the bubble, the lottery. Let's talk about teams inside the bubble. So with everything going on inside the bubble, we had teams that were playing. So the game of the day shouldn't have been the game. The Orlando Magic pulled the biggest upset in the opening day of the playoffs. The same thing they did last year in the opening of the playoffs. The Magic were without Aaron Gordon, without Mike Carter-Williams, without John, without Mo Bamba, without the mascot, without the fans, technically won a road game because of bubble ball, defeating the Milwaukee Bucks this afternoon, the opening game of the opening day 2 of the bubble. Listen, the Magic might have done something that a lot of teams have been trying to do and didn't successfully. They made Giannis a jump shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Gary Clark probably played the greatest defensive game of his career. Wesson Wonder played great defense. Giannis went 8 minutes, DeShaun, in the fourth quarter without a field goal. Hey, they might have found the formula. Now the question is how angry the Bucks are going to be on Thursday for game 2. Can you hear me?
I feel like we all kind of knew that it ultimately was going to come to that, where if you wanted to create a way to where you can beat the Bucks, you were going to force them into being a jump shooter similar to the blueprint that the Toronto Raptors and Kawhi Leonard did with last year. Now, the problem with that is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't play for the Orlando Magic. But I think that it's more so a reminder that this is playoff basketball. You've seen Markelle Fultz do a phenomenal job, finally. You saw, DJ Augustine, who I've always been a huge advocate for, and saying that he is either A, the best backup point guard in the league, or B, certainly deserving to be in that conversation as well. So Terrence Ross, I mean, they just did a very good job, and give credit to the head coach and putting something together, making last-minute adjustments, knowing the players that he wasn't going to have, being very thin in the front court, and beating them with guards. I don't know if he took a page out of Mike D'Antoni book, notepad when he was asleep last night, or what the case was there in the bubble. But nonetheless, he did a really good job at making those adjustments. And you better believe that the Milwaukee Bucks are going to be pissed off. If you're never seen a 50-point performance from Giannis Antetokounmpo before, that might be something that you want to look forward to when Thursday evening rolls around. And then not even that, you have an all-star this past year in Chris Middleton, who didn't particularly do a good job, but you better believe that he's going to bring his A game too. They're not unbeatable. I think that's something that we all seen coming into the season. We all seen coming into the bubble. And so that's what I think that we're seeing right now. If you've been paying close attention to them, they don't look like the team that is unbeatable. They don't look invincible to me. You have some issues, I think, in some cases in the front court with Brooke and Robin Lopez. And while they're really good, I'm not sure if they're as good as advertised or people say that they are. But in some cases you have guys that are, flat foot and kind of, seem like they got their shoes nailed to the floor, like they got gum stuck to the bottom of their shoes. And I think that that's what you have to do, is you have to put those guys in pick and roll situations, bring them out and stretch the floor a little bit, force them defensively to move around and get to the basket. And one thing that I will never doubt is a player or a team that is playing with house money and have absolutely nothing to lose. And I thought that that's something that we saw with Orlando today.
And not especially Cole Vucevic outstanding today, 35 minutes today, career high for him in the playoffs. He was just outstanding. The crazy part about today was Evan Fournier didn't score until the fourth quarter. He had 9 points in the fourth quarter, was scoreless for the majority of the game. Orlando's main score from perimeter wasn't scoring all. Listen, Orlando gets all the credit. I thought this was going to be important this week. They proved me wrong. Other games out of on Tuesday's matchup was the Miami Heat and the Indiana Pacers took on today 113-101 Indiana. Listen, in the battle with TJ Warren and Jimmy Butler wins the game. Butler had 28 points, but one thing I did realize, Miles Turner is back to be very good in the series. Miles Turner didn't kill the pick and roll, and Big Oladipo got hurt again. What else is there? If Oladipo can't go, it's all about Indiana at this point. Miami looks so good. Transition, especially 101 points and 22 points. A shame. Last game of the day for today. Like I said, Portland is where right now. The Oklahoma City Thunder lose to the Houston Rockets 123-108. The Rockets basically do what the Rockets do best, DeShaun, and that's far away from the 3-point line. In this game, James Harden 37 points. Now, mind you, they won this game without Russell Westbrook. Here's my question. If Russell Westbrook is expected to be back in the series, DeShaun, if the Rockets keep playing like this, do you bring Westbrook back, or do you continue to rest a little further?
I think they'll continue to rest him. I think that, I say you bring him back if he can play. I mean, listen, if you're healthy to play, you go out there and play, because I think what you ultimately do is you set yourself up for failure when you don't play. It's almost like you're playing, instead of playing to win, you're playing not to lose. I like to think of that analogy when I think about what they're doing. This is playoffs. Sometimes you hurt yourself by finally bringing them back in the second round, and then you play them, and they could have used that first round to help catapult and get their legs under themselves. This is a situation where I know that Russell Westbrook is the competitor, probably the ultimate competitor, the most competitive player in the NBA, arguably to be in that conversation, that's for sure. But after coming out of a COVID-19 situation, these guys got to be fresh. I don't understand how all of these guys are getting hurt or taking advantage of load management is what I actually think that it is, in situations where they have, where they've been sitting out for so long. But maybe that is part of the reason behind why players are getting hurt. But I think you do yourself a large disservice by not just playing him and just putting him in a situation where he's, still playing minutes, kind of like in a Zion type situation. I think that you've definitely got to get him out there on the floor, because this is the Western Conference. We're seeing that nothing's guaranteed within this NBA playoffs and in this bubble. Nobody knows exactly what it is that you can expect from all of this. You're going to a new situation. And if you start trying to take this new situation and play it going into it like you have in prior situations where you're resting players and so forth, it's going to be really tough, because that West is going to be extremely, extremely competitive.
Speaking of extremely competitive, online, the Blazers are up 36-23 in the first quarter, 31 seconds to go against the LA Lakers. Damian Lillard has 15 points already for the Blazers. Lillard's on pace to score 60 points tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He's 5 of 6 from the floor, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. Listen, LA has an issue. They got to guard Damian Lillard, but the one thing the Lakers do have is the Blazers forget at times, and they get very lax on defense. The Blazers, we saw on Saturday, on multiple occasions, they got big leads, and they allowed it to go away with Damian Lillard left out of the game. If the Blazers cannot lose too much, the Lakers could be in trouble. Speaking of game ones, the games that happened yesterday, well, we'll start with the Toronto Raptors. Well, should I start with the most entertaining game of the day, the opening game? For the last, seems like 65 years in the NBA, the Toronto Raptors normally start the NBA playoffs playing at home on Saturday. Well, they didn't start the playoffs. Guess what? It was a great game. The Denver Nuggets and the Utah Jazz played arguably one of the more interesting games of the bubble, because this game was full of numbers. Why I say numbers? Donovan Mitchell, 57 points. The most points scored by a player under 25 since Michael Jordan 63 against the Boston Celtics. It's 57.
63.
63. 63.
63.
Mitchell's 57 points was the game that, of course, fell short because the Nuggets took care of game one. But listen, Donovan Mitchell is going to score a whole bunch of points in the series. All right. The crazy part is the Jazz were in the game for the majority. Nikola Jokic missed the layup, which proved Rudy Gobert worth it in the regulation. Jokic missed a 3-foot layup because Rudy Gobert was right. What Denver has got all the weapons. Michael Porter Jr. is playing. And Utah does not have Mike Conley back until game 3 at the earliest. Missed last 2 games because of the child. Congratulations to Mr. Conley. You don't yell at the guy do a child. It is what it is. Now, the thing is, Conley is expected to clear protocol with the intent of playing game 3. Speaking of games, the Toronto Raptors started out destroying the Brooklyn Nets as much as up by 30 points in the second quarter. Well, when you go up by 30 points, DeShaun, you know what happens. What happens, DeShaun, when you go up by 30 in the second quarter?
Oh, it's bound to come back. You let your foot off the gas.
And the Blazers and the Raptors let their foot off the gas because the Nets got the game within 7 points in the second half. Good news is the Raptors took care of business. They won game 1. But we all saw for at least the first 2 quarters, the Raptors are going to be dominant. 134-110. I know the score looks pretty bad, but remember, the Raptors pulled away at the very end because of the fact that the Raptors wins. The Boston Celtics beat the Philadelphia 76ers 109-101 in game 1. Big story of the game was Jason Tate. Tate had 28 points. When he was guarded by Masai Timasale, defensive extraordinary for the Sixers, he scored 4 points. He scored 24 against everybody else. Brett Brown, for some reason, just decided not to use on defense. You know what happens. DeShaun, I don't think he talk Raptors, and that's because I kind of have a feeling where this is going. If you're Brett Brown, if you have a guy, I know Timasale is not the best defensive players, but if he's stopping Jason Tate, take that. DeShaun, can you hear me?
A little robotic, a little drowned it out a tad bit, a little overmodulated. I know you're asking about Jason Tatum. Obviously, he had a phenomenal game for the Boston Celtics. And, I will say this much about that particular series. If in the event that the Sixers want to have a chance, Tobias Harris is going to have to Tobias Harris is going to have to come through for this team and carry them along with Joe Embiid. I can't see anybody else necessarily that's going to do that. I mean, they've got some other guys on the team, and that's cute, but it's not going to be nearly enough. Now, I know not having Gordon Hayward, who's out, and it seems like he's always got that red cross next to his name for quite some time. But nonetheless, I think that it might be a little bit too much Boston. But Boston is young. They're inexperienced to an extent where Philly is inexperienced, but I think they may have a little bit more experience. Embiid is going to have to find someone that is willing to help him. And unfortunately, it'll have to be a little bit more than Tobias Harris. I think it should still be a fairly interesting season. I'm just not sure that Philly will have enough to be able to overcome the hump that they've already put themselves in a position, the hole rather, that they've already put themselves in a position in. It's going to be probably too much to dig out.
You're right about Gordon Hayward. Gordon Hayward hurt his ankle. Will be out for 4 weeks. So he's going to not miss just this series. He's going to miss the next one. It's a serious grade 3 injury with the ankle. He ain't coming back, Celtics fans. Here's the problem I have with the Sixers, the rotations. Like I said, Timasale had been guarding Jason Tatum and held him to 4 points on 2 of 9 shooting. Jason Tatum scored 28 points being guarded by everybody else. The substitution patterns that Brett Brown uses has got to be one of the most confusing and annoying things possible. All right. And again, you mentioned Tobias Harris. Where's Tobias Harris? Is $180 million, giving you 15 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He was 6 of 15 from the floor. Here's the issue I have. Besides Timasale not guarding Jason Tatum, your best player and the one player that the Celtics can't stop, Joel Embiid, scores 26 points, but DeShaun only took 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's a huge part of the problem. If I'm being honest, you're freezing up a little bit, but that's obviously a huge part of the issue that they're having. And I'm okay with Tobias Harris' stat line. I mean, yes, they're going to need him for some more scoring. It's up to him to step up as one part of LSU in exchange for another part of LSU, literally being Ben Simmons, who's out. But I'm going to need him to get his ish together as well. When you got Brett Brown right on the hot seat, and you've given these guys all the opportunity. We've gone through the trust the process. We've gone through sitting Joe Embiid for a season. We've gone through sitting Ben Simmons for a season or two. We've gone through, having Markelle Fultz, and, obviously that was a disaster. So they've got to do something. They've got to do something, and they've got to do it now, because depending on how bad this particular series actually gets versus a Boston team that is not invincible either, that they can actually beat. Without Ben Simmons, probably not. With Ben Simmons, a lot more likely. But because you are playing in the environment and the atmosphere that you have to take advantage of Boston's inexperience. And I just don't think that they'll have enough to do that, which is probably an even bigger embarrassment to the front office when it comes time to make some really critical and crucial decisions.
Crazy stat of the day, the Boston Celtics had 6 points off the bench. Only 6 points off the bench, and Marcus Smart had a 0 in 32 minutes. Final game of the day is, speaking of things that are messed up, the Dallas Mavericks fall short to the LA Clippers, 118-110. We only got a couple minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes to talk about it, but this game is really marred, not because of the return of Montrezl Harrell, because of the ejection of Kristaps Porzingis. So I'm going to take 30 seconds to talk about this. It had to be the dumbest ejection I've ever seen in a playoff game. All right. The first technical with him and Paul George was bad. The second one was even worse. Okay. You do not eject somebody. I know by the letter of the law, and DeShaun, we do this in the playoffs, the letter of the law, you can't extend your arm out in any type of situation. I've watched NBA playoff basketball in the 80s. DeShaun, you've watched, you're from Detroit. You're from the Detroit area. I've watched guys get clotheslined. The Pistons were notorious for this. So were the Celtics. And guys were still playing. Yeah, we pushed somebody and you're ejected. Porzingis should not have been ejected. It caused the tide to turn. And here's a question, DeShaun, real quick. 30 seconds on this. Luka Doncic scored 42 points yesterday. Great number. Highest total for a debut in a playoff game with the 42. But the Clippers forced 10 turnovers. They use a multitude of defenders. Is this the game plan when it comes to the Dallas Mavericks? Let Luka get his and just force turnovers everywhere?
Probably. That's the way that it's looking right about now. You talked about how soft this whole thing is becoming and how watered down. It's watering down the league. If you can't get into a player's face to kind of stick up for your guy, you should have never even brought the opportunity around to be able to put these guys in a bubble and play basketball. If you wanted these guys to be all extra separated, it's basketball. Don't even start the resumption of the NBA back up again. I'm just extremely disappointed. I mean, a guy is showing emotion. What Porzingis showed is something that I love. He got a block shot. He turned around and pumped his fist in the air. He didn't hit a player. Nothing was threatening. He didn't threaten anybody. A little shove here and there, a little love tap, whatever. But it's because he's Porzingis. If he had the last name James or Harden or Westbrook or Durant or Irving or something along those lines, we wouldn't see anything like that. And that's probably the most disappointing thing that I've seen. Let these guys play basketball. That changed the whole dynamic of the game, if you ask me. And it was just a way to allow the Los Angeles Clippers to get back in the game, because up until that point, I'm not sure that anybody really thought that Dallas had as good of a chance at beating the Clippers as they did until that happened, and that obviously changed the way that the game looked.
Kawhi Leonard, 29 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists. They got 27 points from Paul George and a double-double for Ivica Zubac, 10 points, 10 rebounds. Listen, Doncic had the storyline, had the 42 points. He had the 9 assists, but like I said, we talked about 11 turnovers. they basically pressured him on ball by using Patrick Beverley, by using Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. DeShaun, before we go, any shout-outs? I know we're running close to time tonight.
Man, just shout out to you, doing a great job as usual, per usual. Mr. Griffin, Cortland Matthew Griffin, Precious Sherrod, Rodney Richardson as well for chiming in on the line. And I'm just happy to see, man, at Tate's Take Hoops on the Twitter as well as on the IG. That's TATESTAKEHOOPS hashtag, and per usual, where basketball lives.
Once again, thanks to my co-host DeShaun Tate. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, liking, sharing, and tagging the show, as well as the viewers on Zingo Television, as well as Facebook Live and YouTube. Once again, we'll be back on Tuesday night talking about who won the lottery, what team is going to be dancing, what team's going to be dancing for LO Ball, and what's going on in the NBA playoffs. And before we go, once again, we're on day number, I think, 155 of Breonna Taylor's killers being still out and not been arrested. The Louisville Police Department needs to go ahead and take care of this and get this thing done so we can start the process of taking care of what should be done and what should have been done a long time ago. So please keep Breonna Taylor's name in your thoughts, your prayers, as well as your words. So for myself and DeShaun Tate, we'll check you guys out on Monday nights. Peace. Tuesday night. Peace. Yeah. Got a lot of technical difficulties in that one. All right. Show is over.